Oh, definitely.
And but it's cool enough that we got the windows open today. So,
Are you good?
yes, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. So here's where the comments will appear,
Okay.
and we are good to go.
Okay. Hello and welcome to another virtual author event at the Poison Pen Bookstore. I'm John Charles, and today the Poison Pen and I are delighted to welcome author Darcie Wilde, whose new book, The Heir, will be out in bookstores like the Poison Pen tomorrow for its publication debut. If you'd like us to hold a copy for you of the book at the Poison Pen or put one in the mail, just give us a call or go online after this event. We would be happy to do that. Now I'd like to welcome author Darcie Wilde.
Oh, thank you so much for inviting me. I've been so excited to do this one.
Thank you for joining us today. My first question for you is, as my question to many authors, why don't you start by telling us a little bit about Darcie before you became a published author? Did you always want to write? What was your early life like?
Oh, wow. Yes. Well, I pretty much writing was all I ever seriously wanted to do. I mean, there was a brief period where I thought I was going to be president, but I was 7 at the time, and we think a lot of things when we're 7. No, but I grew up in a house full of books. My father especially was a just an ardent reader and collector. And what I grew up surrounded by was a lot of science fiction and fantasy. And neither one of my parents believed that, they didn't believe that that you should be limited by your age in terms of what you read. If I could string the words together, I got to read the book. So I could go through anything. When I was in 8th grade, I decided I wanted to read The Hunchback of Notre Dame, which, if you've seen the book, is about like this. The librarian actually didn't want me to read the unabridged version, didn't think I could handle it. And plus, it was on the top shelf of the adult section. So I was too short to get it. She did eventually hand it over, but I told my dad about it, and he got mad. He said, if that ever happens again, you come get me. Like, okay, so that's the house I grew up in. So it's probably not too much of a surprise that I was writing stories from a very early age. I plotted out my first 7-book series when I was still like 10 years old.
Wow.
So and then when I was 13, again, because I grew up around so much fantasy and science fiction, I encountered the work of an author named Ursula Le Guin. It was very, very well known, and she had what we would now call a young adult series called The Chronicles of Earthsea. And the middle book is The Tombs of Atuan. Stick with me. But that was the book that flipped the switch for me. I read that and it did something in my head. And I'm like, this is what I want to do. And I don't want to do anything else. This is it. And I was very, very lucky. My high school had a really broad curriculum at the time. And one of the classes was writing for publication.
Yeah.
And the teacher, Mr. DQ, he was really serious about it. He, it was an elective. So all the kids in there were already writing. And he taught us how to research a market, how to prepare a manuscript for publication, because this was back in the day and it was all on paper. And how to query, how to get guidelines, how to keep a log of what you'd submitted. And everybody in that class was submitting to professional markets before the end of the semester. And that's where I got my first rejection slip. It was from Young Miss Magazine. I was 16 years old. But it was, again, this was back when everything was on paper. So it was this little quarter sheet of paper. It was a form letter. But somebody in the margin in pen had written lovely story.
Oh.
Handwritten. I was lost. I was gone. And an adult person who didn't have to like it had said something nice. I never wanted to do anything else.
Did you have a backup plan? Because I know a lot of times you want to be an author, but you're told that's not realistically financially. You should be a teacher. You should be something else. No, you're going to be an author. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I was going to be a writer. Now, my mom, she was, Dad was like, okay, whatever, but Mom, as mothers are,
Mhm.
was a little more concerned. She, like you say, she did not think being an author, a fiction author, especially because at the time I started, I was writing science fiction.
Hmm.
Science fiction was not exactly the road to riches. So we butted heads a lot, but I decided that okay, I didn't want to teach. Mom taught, and I saw what kind of work that was. She taught elementary school, she taught high school. I saw the hours she worked. I saw what it takes to design a course, to grade the papers, and I wanted none of that.
Mhm.
But when I got to college, I took everything I could get my hands on that was vaguely practical about writing. I took journalism, I took advertising writing, I took script writing. And so, I like, okay, I'm not going to be able to make a lot of money right away. I don't expect to, but I will find a way to make money from writing. And so that was what I explored when I was in college. And I did, in fact, get a job out of college. I got a job as a technical writer. It was not fascinating, but what it did do was it was actually in the end very beneficial because back in the day, technical writing meant you were writing the manuals for the software. That's what I was doing. And it taught me how to take a whole lot of complicated information and put it in a straight line. And I was writing every day. I was writing at work, and then I was going home and I was writing my fiction. And that was what I did. I had no social life. you know the early 20s were a blur because it was I am writing and I am writing and I am writing, and what are you doing? Oh, I'm writing. But it worked.
What was it like getting your first book published? Because that was a while ago.
It was a while ago. Yeah. It was extraordinarily exciting. Yeah, the it it was because it was something I had worked for so long. I was speechless. It wasn't when I started in short stories.
Mhm.
Again, that was the time honored path was you wrote short stories for magazines and then you graduated into novels. Things are different now. But I remember when I got the first acceptance from a magazine, and I tore open the letter again, all on paper, but I tore open the letter, I read it, and I am in my living room jumping up and down, screaming, I'm an author! I'm off! I'm off!
Hmm.
So, when the book came through, I was just, I've done it. I've done it. It's real now.
Hmm.
And no looking back.
And now, years later, we're talking about your latest book, which is The
Mhm.
Heir. What can you tell us about the book?
Well, we have it's a very traditional mystery.
Mhm.
And it's a traditional mystery with an amateur sleuth, but the sleuth is got an unusual day job. Her day job is being heir to the throne of the United Kingdom. This is what would have happened if the young Princess Victoria, soon to be Queen Victoria, happened across a dead body on the grounds of Kensington Palace. And that's where the book starts. And we take it from there. And it is Victoria and her uh, reluctant companion, Jane Conroy, deciding they are going to work out. First, they have to figure out who this body was,
Mhm.
and then they have to navigate kind of a storm of court politics and the fact that they are both 16-year-old girls in a world that does not take them seriously, no matter if one of them is
Mhm.
about to be the heir to the throne. Um, to figure out what on earth has happened here and why is everybody trying to cover it up.
Why Victoria? What made you think for my next series, I want to anchor it around this historic figure?
Well, I'll tell you, that wasn't entirely my idea.
Oh.
I have another series, the Useful Woman series, which is set in the English Regency. And we had hit the point where I'd finished up my contract on that, and my editor and I were talking about continuing that series, but we were also talking about, well, let's also it's hit the time where we want to see about adding on something new, and what can we do that will be fresh and interesting, and yet will bring along my audience, and keep in that historical vein. So we want to do something with strong women. We maybe want to do a different time period. And during the course of the conversation, Wendy, who thinks like this, said, "What about Queen Victoria?" What about Queen Victoria? Okay. If I write about Queen Victoria, I said, can I write about her mom and her mom's smarmy boyfriend? Because I had, for yet another series, sort of pre-researched some of the background, that some of Queen Victoria's childhood in Kensington Palace, and what she went through at the hands of the people who wanted to very much control her and to keep power through her. So I had some idea of how very, very Gothic that entire situation was.
Yeah.
And Wendy said, yes, sure, absolutely. And I said, I'm in. Because it is not often you get a historical period where you really are handed a mustache twirling villain. I mean, John Conroy, the aforementioned smarmy boyfriend, really was the villain of the piece. His stated ambition was to be Victoria's private secretary and to be the power behind the throne, even after she took the throne, even after she reached her majority. His entire goal while helping to raise her, and he did help to raise her, was to break her spirit and to make her entirely dependent on him and her mother. And that was the goal of the Kensington system, which was the set of rules she was raised by. And he was not subtle about it, and everybody knew it. And what's the most amazing part is Victoria knew it. And she, from a very early age, was fighting it. And that was fascinating to me, is how could such a young girl figure it out so soon and be so determined to keep her independence?
It was a terribly regimented system. I mean, her day was planned down to like almost the last minute. The attack was always strictly structured. It was almost like being a prisoner in a sense.
Very much so. She was not allowed to associate. I mean, part of this is just being a royal. I mean, the more I learn about it, the more I think that that royalty is an awful way to reach children. I mean, this is, and it's not great now. It was not great back then. But yeah, she was very much imprisoned. She had no friends her own age, except for a couple of Conroy's daughters. She had no one to socialize with. She was kept away from the court, from her uncle, King William, and his wife, Queen Adelaide, who would have welcomed her with open arms, and but she was absolutely forbidden to have anything to do with them. There were things that I didn't put in the book because I didn't know how exactly to describe them, but to teach her to stand up straight, they tied a sprig of holly under her chin, so that anytime her chin sagged, she would poke on the holly thorns. So even by the standards of the day, she was being abused. And like I say, what's amazing about her as a human being was that even without the backup, without a family, without friends, she realized that this was not how she was going to live, and she was not going to give in. And there are stories, people who saw them, accounts from the servants, accounts from people who did come round, of enormous fights, screaming matches, between her and her mother, and Victoria just absolutely refusing to knuckle under. She might lose in the end, but she was not going to make it easy.
One of the things that I really enjoyed about the book, and you'd written about this, and I think it kind of ties into that, was when you're writing, your goal was to entertain readers first, but you also wanted to open us up to ideas about women's lives and roles in history, because
Mm-hmm.
sometimes there's this very preconceived notion. I think that plays into Victoria. I mean, if you don't really know much about her, all you think of is this dour old woman swallowing
Mm-hmm.
black saying, I'm not amused. But she actually had this rich life.
As a young girl, Victoria was vivacious. She was energetic. She loved music. She loved dancing. There's another story. I mean, she had nerve. There's another story of the one thing John Conroy did do that actually worked in Victoria's favor was he basically invented or reinvented the royal progress. He and the Duchess of Kent, that was Victoria's mother, would take Victoria on these tours throughout the country and show her to the people, and everybody loved her, this beautiful little girl. But during one of these tours, they went sailing on a Navy ship to review the ships like you do when you're a royal, and something went very wrong. A sudden gust came up and a mast from one of the nearby ships, it dismasted. The mast came crashing down, barely missed the deck.
Oh.
A few feet in another direction, and she would have been terribly injured. Everybody's in a panic. She's just sitting there chewing on a pork chop, going, wow, that was interesting. So that's an example of the kind of nerve that she had. And yeah, very, very different from the Widow of Windsor. This, the image she's been left. She was also a flirt. It doesn't come into the Heir too much, but in the second book, which I'm working on now, when she's, when they're starting to bring the princes in to see which marriage might possibly work out, and she's getting to go to balls and she's getting to go to concerts, she had an eye for the gentleman. So again, not stuff we think about, but she had this rich life, even if it was despite the attempts to constrain her.
I would think as a writer, one of your biggest challenges when you're either doing historical fiction, historical romance, or historical mystery is balancing what we know about history with what you want to do in a story.
Mm-hmm.
How do you find that balance in the Heir? Was there ever a point where you wanted Victoria to do something, but it just wouldn't fit the historical record?
All the time. It's constant. I mean, the first thing where I start is remembering that times change, but people don't. We are always the same. So, the fears and the feelings and the loves, those remain pretty constant. So, you can easily empathize with someone. Maybe I don't feel the exact physical strictures, but I know what it is to be stuck someplace I don't want to be. I know what it is, as a young person growing up, I found my town very restrictive. I found the expectations on me smothering. I'm not saying I had it as bad as Victoria, and I certainly wasn't doing it in the public eye, but I could draw on those experiences. And of course, I've been cold, I've been hungry, I've been scared. So you bring all of that personal experience into it, kind of like an actor does when creating a role. You draw on your own experience and you project. The rest of it, it's a matter of imagination and balance. And I'm also fortunate in that within the past few years, the Royal Archives have released Victoria's diaries.
Oh,
She kept a journal from the time she was 13 throughout the rest of her life. And while those diaries have been heavily censored and some of them were out and out burnt, that's a whole nother story. A lot of them remain. And so I was able to, on any given day, I was able to look at those diaries and see in Victoria's own words what she was doing. So, if she went to a concert she really, really liked or didn't like. And in fact, the funny part is you said, the Widow of Windsor saying, we are not amused. She started doing that as a young girl. There are all these accounts of concerts and plays she's gone to, and she will sum them up saying, I was most amused, or I was not amused. And I'm like, wait a minute. So I found I was very amused by that. So, you take all of that and you blend it and you hope for the best.
Well, I think you really succeed in a way that successful historical writers do because you have this ability to put the reader in that time frame without overwhelming them in details. And one example I just found as a reader was when Victoria was visiting Dr. Merton's household, and you just happened to mention that the mirrors had been removed because that was the custom at that time when there was a death in the family. So that shows you pay attention to the historical details, but it's not something that drags the plot down.
And I love that. I also love that in a historical. It's, sometimes you can get very wrapped up in I want everybody to be immersed in this world. But it also turns out that sometimes the more you describe, the more the reader has to pull back because they can't hold all that detail in their heads. Everybody's got to have breathing room. You want to loosen it in your descriptions. But I love a detail that's like, oh, I didn't know that. Or, yes, I did know that. And you have just showed me you're paying attention. Okay, I can relax now. I can go with it.
Yeah.
So I'm really glad I succeeded in doing that for you.
What did you discover while you were writing the book and researching about Victoria that surprised you the most?
I think it was that innate determination that she carried with her through her life. I found that that really, really surprising. The fact that she wrote, they think 60 million words in her lifetime, that she was an accomplished sketcher and drawer.
Yeah.
She was an artist. And there was, in fact, one of the things that and I posted it on Instagram, that really helped me, feel, that mystical connection. That is one of those things that makes writers sound crazy. But there is a drawing, a self-portrait she did looking in the mirror of herself at 16. And it's a really interesting expression she gets on her face, and her eyes are very intense and full of feeling. And I kept this on my desk while I was writing. So, to sort of remind me of what I wanted to portray in the character. But that she was that level of a sketch artist, that surprised me.
One of the other things I appreciated was the relationship you created between Victoria and Jane, because they start out almost as adversaries or people that don't really like each other, and they develop this, in the world of mystery, this partnership, almost like a Holmes and Watson or a Poirot and Hastings kind of situation. Was that something you wanted intentionally at the start, or did that develop organically?
Well, I knew I wanted Victoria to have a partner. There's a reason you have Watson and Hastings, and that's because the detective has got to have somebody to talk to. If you don't have that, everything gets very tricky very fast, and I think it makes for a less interesting book. So I needed a Watson, and that's exactly how I thought of it. But the question was, who could I get? The only other real candidate, the only other person we know historically that Victoria was very close to at this time in her life was her governess, Baroness Leysen. But Leysen's an adult. And she's a figure of authority who has got other concerns and who is not going to be happy with a 16-year-old girl trying to solve a murder. So I needed somebody her own age. So that left me John Conroy's daughters, who were the only other people she was allowed to see. So I picked out Jane, and because they were closest in age, and because they did keep up some kind of, historically, they kept up some kind of relationship. We know that because Victoria ended up giving her a pension. So, so that's okay. The history nerd in me is happy. We got something to anchor it on. And then, then it was knowing what we know about John Conroy and his tendencies and his treatment of Victoria. We got to figure he wasn't so great with his own family. So what's it like being this daughter whose job it is to help reinforce the family dependency on Victoria? And yeah, it's documented. He said that to his kids, and he said that to his daughters, that it's your job to help bring up the family station, to help make her dependent on our family. So what's it like being that girl? And, and then here comes this very strange event and this, utterly unimaginable circumstance. And suddenly you've got a chance to make a real change, to make a real relationship, to, that's outside of the demands that have been put on you, but is risky. So, that was the primary thought in my head every time I wrote with Jane, is that everything she's doing is a risk for her.
Yeah.
And how would you navigate that? And how would you feel about that? And so, I always think, I have a friend who writes Sherlock Holmes stories, and he insists that if you're going to have a good Holmes, you must have a good Watson. And that also was in my mind. It's like, if I'm going to have a good Victoria, I got to have good backup. And so, I really wanted to work with Jane, and I really wanted her to feel like a full human being in very strange circumstances.
Jane also allows you to introduce readers to another segment of society that Victoria would not travel in. So she kind of gives her an access to a different part of the world.
Yeah. Jane's the window to the wider world.
Let's talk a little bit about your writing process, because what I found intriguing was you had said, as a writer, you called it both the most dangerous phrase and the most useful phrase, and that phrase was "what if." How does that play into your writing process?
Everything starts with a what if.
Oh.
If it doesn't start with "I can do better than that," which, it doesn't sound anywhere near as sympathetic, but yeah, everything starts with what if. So, Wendy says to me, "Young Queen Victoria," and I say, "Don't be ridiculous, but what if? What if? What if? And what if there was a dead body? What if it was somebody in the household? What if she was the one who found it?" That's where it all starts, because the answer to every question, every what if, is a phrase or a scene or a set of possibilities, or it's I don't know. I'm going to have to go find out. And sometimes that's the most fun. Because, what if there's a dead body on the grounds of the palace? What happens? I have no idea. Well, okay, where do we find that out? So, sorry.
But that's all right. I was just going to say that in your writing process, especially for this book, you don't just have to keep track of historical events and characters. It's a mystery too. And that adds another layer of, because let's be honest, we want it to be something that we as the reader can follow along and say, okay,
Mm.
there's a clue. What are you doing? Is this a suspect? And it's very satisfactorily resolved. But how does that work for you as a writer when you add a mystery component? Do you always know starting off in the book, this is what I want to do, these are the suspects, this is how it's going to play out? Or do you just kind of start and hope that you can knit it all together by the end of the book?
I always think I know who did it.
Okay.
I have to have a target. Occasionally, I find out I'm wrong,
Hmm.
which is very embarrassing. Occasionally, I will get to like the last third of the book and stop dead and go, "Holy cow, I was wrong. That's not who did it. It was this other character. That's who really did it." And Lisa, that's a very weird feeling. But sometimes the subconscious knows best, and you just have to go with it. But I start out with a general scenario. Young Victoria finds a body. Okay, who's the body? I actually found out who the body was by reading her journals. There was a death that she reports during the year I wanted to write about. And I'm like, oh, that's a name we know from over here. Isn't that terribly interesting? So that told me, who she found. And, and then I let that sit and marinate, and I make notes, and my cast of characters grows, and I'll sketch some scenes, and I had the scene where she finds the body. That came very, very quickly. I knew exactly how that was going to work. In fact, I knew how that was going to work weeks before I knew who she found, which was unusual for me. But so you have that, and you sort of let it. I sort of let it grow out from there in all the directions that it wants to. But I don't start writing properly until I have an idea of who done it, and then it gets more sequential. Not entirely, I'm not that kind of writer, but it gets more sequential. And like I say, sometimes I'll have 2/3 of the book done, and I look at it and I go, nope, got a better suspect now. got a better answer, got a better ending. But that has to come out of the writing and the research and the rumination and all of that. But I gotta have something to at least aim for.
Before your new series with Victoria, you had another historical mystery series, Rosalind Thorne, or what you call the Useful Woman series. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how you came to call it that?
Yeah, that was fascinating. That was an example of research coming into play. I was at the time writing Regency romances. Regency romances are always popular. I'm a fan. Of course, I'm a big fan of Jane Austen, as all right-thinking people are. And but I knew that there were a lot of other women who were writing novels in Jane Austen's time. And I was trolling for ideas. And I thought, I'll read some of the books that were written around Jane Austen. Don't bother. There is a reason Jane Austen survived and nobody else did. There are very, very few other authors who could even approach her level. But there was one book specifically called Almack's. Now, Almack's was a ballroom. It was the center of what was called the marriage mart. It was where young women were brought to meet young men by their families to hopefully set up advantageous marriages. And it was run by a group of 7 women. And these women were the most powerful women on the London social scene because they controlled access to these ballrooms, and nobody could get in without their say-so. And this woman named Mary Ann Spencer Stanhope Hudson wrote a book that was a tell-all about the board of the women on the board, about how they decided who could get in, about all their foibles. It was a sensation in its day. It caused a huge libel case. It was a runaway hit. And I'm like, I'm going to read that one because that's going to have a world of ideas.
Yeah.
And in the middle of it, I found a paragraph where one character is talking to another, and she's talking about a third character who has become such a useful woman. And what they meant was, so when an aristocratic woman, when her family fell on hard times, her friends would sometimes rally around her, and they would do things like they'd invite her to stay. And that wasn't just for the weekend. That could be for, 6 weeks, 3 months. And during that time, she would be allowed to use the carriages. She'd be loaned clothes. She'd be invited to dinner so she could keep up appearances without having a whole lot of money. And in return, what she'd do is become kind of an unpaid social secretary. She'd help with invitations. She'd go out and leave business cards. She'd run errands. And I'm like, that's fascinating. Why haven't I heard about this before? And why I want to read about this character. And so I wrote up a pitch for Wendy, for my editor. And I sent it to her, and she came back to me and she said, this is a mystery. This isn't a romance. This is a mystery. And as I tend to do, I said, Wendy, you're crazy. But I said it in my head because you don't say that to your editor. And I sat and it is my policy to sit with these things for 24 hours so I don't say the wrong thing in an impulse email. Because Wendy is terrific and she's brilliant and I love her. And she tends to be right because by the next day I'm like, holy crap, she's right. This is a mystery and I know how to do it and I know who did it. So I basically woke up the next day. I'm like, yep, it's a mystery. Okay, here we go. And that's how Rosalind Thorne was born, and that's how they became the Useful Woman mysteries.
One of my other favorite series that you've written, and I never would have connected you with it until I started reaching the Heir, was the Chatty Corgi series.
Oh, the Chatty Corgis. Yes, I love those
different,
books.
But so charming.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I had so much fun writing those. Those were a real blast. Yes. I mean, anytime you get to write a talking dog.
One of the questions I have for you is because there's been, especially recently in the last, we'll say 5 to 10 years, been a real emphasis, a real kind of almost pressure on authors to develop them, not just to write books, but to develop themselves as a brand. So that they can be marketed, they can be put out to readers, they're identified easily. You've written so many different kinds of books. You've written some that are the same, but you've written a wide range. Is that more of a challenge for you now to package yourself? Do your publishers say you need to stick to this lane? Or is it an advantage because it lets you do what you want? It lets you kind of take advantage of where readers are going?
I try not to get caught up, and it's hard not to. But I've always been easily bored. I read very widely and I enjoy writing very widely. So, I've been really, really lucky to have had the chance, and I hope this continues, to write, across a range of genres to sort of go, where the muse takes me. And, sometimes it works out and sometimes it doesn't. And this is kind of where, pseudonyms come into play. You and I, before the recording started, we were talking about that a little bit. I have no problem with writing different genres under different names. So, if it helps the bookstores know where to put the book on the shelf, we'll come up with another name. That's fine by me. I'm, I like my name. My name is a great name. But I have no problem with changing it over and these days, if you're writing under a lot of names, there's less pressure to keep that a hush hush secret. Used to be,
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's not the case anymore. So, everybody kind of expects, you write you write your young adult under this name, you write your cozies under this name, you write your historicals under this name, but you can have all three names on your website, and so that your audiences can find you and follow you. So that's the way I tackle it, and the way I'll continue to tackle it until somebody tells me I have to do something different.
What have you learned? What have you discovered after your years in the writing business? What piece of knowledge do you wish you had known when you were first starting out as a writer?
Ooh, oh, that's a good one. I would have loved to know that I am a real writer. I think everybody, frankly, women especially, labor under imposter syndrome. And I did for many, many years. I wish I had, if I could go back and tell, the young woman who was jumping up and down in her living room, waving that letter around, yeah, you've done it. You are a real writer. You will always be a real writer. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. Don't let anybody tell you have to be X, Y, and Z, or that you have to be writing. What I got a lot of is, if you're not writing this way, and this way, you're not real. Baloney.
Yeah.
There's a family show. We will say baloney. Let all that go. And I would say, be willing to learn. Be ready to learn for the rest of your life. You're never going to be done. You're never going to know how to write books. If you're lucky, you learn how to write this book. But be ready, and that is actually one of the delights, looking back on it, is that every single day I get up and it is my job to find something new. Whether I'm researching a fact, whether I'm coming up with a scene, whether I'm meeting a character for the first time, always there's something new. And that's what keeps it exciting. And it can be a little exhausting.
Yeah.
But as long as there's that new thing, as long as I wake up and something new today, then I know I'm still on the right path. Then I know that everything, that this is where I'm supposed to be.
Now, I would think one way to achieve some measure of happiness as a writer is to know how you want to define success, because that can mean different things to different people. I think this perception that success is being the #1 New York Times bestselling author, or success is being published in 20 different countries, or it's getting a movie deal with Netflix. But success as a writer actually is different for each writer.
And that's a really good point. And that's something, and that's something I've grappled with, and I've grappled with it lately. What is success look like for me? What is enough? When, and I think everybody at some point in their life has to sit back and say, what's going to be enough for me? And that's tricky, because it's a moving goalpost, because, most of us, enough is just a little bit more than I've got. But that keeps shifting. So, I've had success by, a lot of measures. First of all, I'm happy. I'm happy I've got a good life. I have met so many terrific people. Excuse me. That's one of the other things I really, really like about what I do is, moments like this. You and I didn't meet before this, but here we are. We're having a great conversation.
Mhm.
I'm going to be going to all kinds of new bookstores and new events the next couple of weeks. I'm going to meet all kinds of terrific people. I like people. I like meeting people, and this gives me a great excuse to talk to everybody. But I'm going on 50 books. I
Yeah.
started publishing novels in the mid 90s, and I haven't stopped. That's success.
Mhm.
Have I, Stephen King has nothing to worry about from me, and is never going to, but that's okay. I'm okay with that. Do I, there was a day when, and it was one of the Chatty Corgi mysteries. I got a email from a woman who said she was going through chemo, and she put my book in her bag to take with her to the chemo appointment because it was something she could read and enjoy while she was going through this. If that's not success, I don't know what success is if it is not that.
Yeah. You mentioned a little bit before, and you can say as much as you want or as little, but there will be another in the Victoria series.
Yes. Victoria is 17. And obviously there's going to be a mystery, but when Victoria was 17, there was another momentous event in her life that changed everything, although she didn't know it at the time. Yeah, like I said earlier, they started bringing the princes in to meet her. Yeah, we're gonna meet the princes.
Yeah. That will draw upon some of your romance writer skills, I imagine.
Yes. I've already got some scenes that I am very, very happy with. Because that relationship started early, and it was really interesting, and it is extremely interesting to read about in her journals, to read her descriptions. Everybody knows who I'm talking about. Yeah, Albert's showing up. So Albert is going to be there, and to be reading and writing about the early stages of one of the great romances of history is just, I am having so much fun.
We do have a few questions from some people tuning in before we have to sign off. Your first question is from someone who wants to know, did you see the PBS Victoria series? If so, what did you think?
I saw some of it, and I thought that, they took liberties with the facts, but I thought the substance of it was correct. I thought, I thought the relationship they showed between Victoria and Albert was really, really good. I thought they captured the earnestness of these two people really, really well.
Another reader and fan wants to know, you now write historical mysteries. Is this something that you read? Are there particular authors or series that you follow?
Yes, I love historical mysteries. So let's see. Favorites. Kate Quinn. I would read her laundry list. She's kind of amazing. Let's see who else. The House on Biscayne Bay was one I read.
Something.
Yeah.
Cleo.
Yeah, who was that?
Yeah, I know
That
who you're
was
talking about.
That was really good. For Regency mysteries, for Jane Austen inspired mysteries, Celeste Connolly and Vanessa Kelly, really, really fabulous. Let's see. So those are some, but yes, I love a good, juicy historical mystery. Oh, one that I just recently read that was really, really fun. Was The Murder of Mr. Ma. This is really different. It's kind of if Sherlock Holmes fell into a Jackie Chan movie, which sounds like it shouldn't work, but it does. It's great.
S.J. Roseanne, I think, and another gentleman co-op.
Yes. Yeah. Just, it was just fun. It was fluffy and ludicrous and a world of fun.
One of your other readers wants to know, is there a particular time period in history you'd love to write about but have not had the chance to do so yet?
The 20s.
Oh.
I would love to. Oh, I'm a great fan of the Jazz Age, and of course, it's the golden age of mystery. So, and I also would really, really, really love to do end of the century Paris.
Oh,
I would love to do something in the art world. I would, that was just such a fascinating time of, of social change, of technological change. There was just so much going on at that time. I would love to, really dig in to that space.
Another reader wonders, what do you think today is the biggest challenge for writers? Is it the impact of technology or just the access to markets from readers?
I think that the biggest challenge is deciding what kind of a career you actually want. There's so many more paths these days and so many more possibilities. When I was starting out, there was one way you did this. There was you started in magazines and you ended in novels. And if you were a fiction writer, that was what you did. And there was exactly one way to do it. You submitted, you wrote your story, you submitted your story, you either got in or you didn't. And now the paths have branched. And how do you choose to start traditional? Do you choose to start independent? How do you hybridize? Do you ever go traditional? Can you make a fully independent when you all of that? So I think choosing, and I think navigating that branching segment of the business without getting your dreams torn apart for corporate America. Not that I have opinions. I think that's a much bigger challenge than when I was starting out.
And we have time for just one more question. It looks like this particular viewer wants to know, they love the cover of the upcoming book, The Heir. How much input as an author do you have into the design of your book's covers and titles?
A lot of that depends on who you are. For me, I always send in let's take titles. I always send in a manuscript with a working title, and then the editors in the marketing department look at it, and usually, let's try something else. So we will go back and forth, and we will make lists, and it's usually and it becomes a compromise. Sometimes there's something everybody likes. A lot of times it's like, okay, here's our top 3, we're voting. So that's titles. With covers, for me, the art department at Kensington is fabulous, and I've had some amazing covers, but they'll usually send me a pretty finished product and say, what do you think? And I will say something like, well, gosh, that's a sapphire on that brooch. Now, Victoria owned a sapphire, but it was given to her by Albert. She hasn't met Albert yet, so can we make it like an enamel brooch? We know she had one of those. And they say, oh, yeah, sure, we can do that. Or I'll send them a picture. And then, or I'll look at it and say, wow, off the shoulder dress. I don't know if she would have, wait a minute, there's a portrait of her in an off the shoulder dress. Pass citizen, okay. So it's that kind of thing. But, I have never, because the art department there is so fabulous, I've never had to send it back and say, no, I can't do this. And I don't know what would happen if I did, and I hope I don't have to find out.
Before we go, can you tell us how readers can find out more about you and your books and your upcoming works? Are you on social media?
I am on social media a bit. I am on I'm at Facebook and I'm at Instagram, and I'm Darcie Wilde author in both places. But the best thing you can do is go to my website, which is also darciewildeauthor.com, and sign up for my newsletter. We got a brand new, beautiful website, and you should be able to sign up for it. You can sign up for the website or for the newsletter. You can purchase all the backlist there, and yeah, you'll have all the news about upcoming events.
That's wonderful. 60 minutes has just flown by. I can't believe how quickly we've gone through an hour with author Darcie Wilde. Her new book, The Heir, will be out in bookstores like The Poison Pen tomorrow. I'd like to thank Darcie for taking time to be with us virtually and sharing her creative process. And for all of you tuning in to another virtual author event at The Poison Pen, thank you as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Darcie. Now I'm going to click on things, and in case I lose you, you were terrific.
Thank you. It was a great interview. Thanks.
Okay. And stop recording.